Marhaban, my name is Ian Campbell and this is the second in a series of videos intended to introduce you to the complicated, but not necessarily difficult, grammar of modern Standard Arabic. This series of videos will address how to make nouns and adjectives into phrases, which requires a great deal more in Arabic than it does in English. And in this sixth and final video in this series, I'll be talking about human plurals and also how to make a noun into an adjective, like Egypt into Egyptian or Iraq into Iraqi. This is much easier in Arabic than it is in English, and in fact, I'm going to start with that. So let's learn a new word, nisba. Its root is noun, sin, ba. This should be pretty clear to you by now. Nisba means relation, like in relation to something else, not a cousin. And to turn a noun into an adjective, and this is called a nisba adjective, hence its name, we add the suffix e, but with a double e here. No one pronounces it like this, but that's how we write it. And then we treat it like a regular adjective, add ta marbuta to make it feminine, and so forth. So this is very easy in Arabic, because in English, you have to learn all kinds of suffixes, and they're completely arbitrary. I live in Georgia, so I'm a Georgian. But I used to live in Michigan, and believe it or not, I was a Michigander. We all have all these different strange things. Egypt, Egyptian, Iraq, Iraqi, Lebanon, Lebanese, and so forth. But we only have to have one of them in Arabic, and that makes it way easier for us. So for example, Egypt is Masr. So something that's Egyptian is Masri. It's really Masriya with a double ya, but absolutely nobody says it like that. So it's just Masri. So Talib Masri, an Egyptian student. At-Taliba al-Masriya, the Egyptian student, who is a woman here. Again, we wouldn't make that distinction in English. And in the last video, I used al-Lugha al-Arabiya, which was an example of a nisba adjective, the Arabic language. Lugha is language, it's feminine, you could see the ta marbuta. Arab is Arab, so Arabi is Arabic, and then we have to make it feminine to agree with its noun. So this is really, really easy to do. It's one of the few places where Arabic is actually a lot simpler and easier than English is. Sometimes we have to mess around with the word, though. So, for example, America is America. So we're going to drop this final alif here and turn it into Amriki. So, Sayara Amrikiya, an American car. It's really Sayara Amrikiya, but nobody says this. Sayara Amrikiya is what everyone says. Surya is our word for Syria. So we're going to drop the ya and the alif here and turn it into Talib Suri, a Syrian student. If she were a woman, she'd be Taliba Suriya. So this is very easy to do. You're going to drop final alif or ya alif, and if it's alif hamza, you're going to drop that as well. And if the name of the place that you're making the nisba adjective out of begins with alif lam, then we're going to drop that too. So al-Urdun is Jordan, like the country. It's named for the river, which is why it has alif lam. So Urduni is Jordanian. So we'd add the alif lam back if its noun were definite, like at-Talib al-Urduni, for example. Al-Maghreb, Morocco, drop the alif lam as well, so it becomes Maghrebi. So Taliba Maghribiya. Or if she were definite, at-Taliba al-Maghribiya. So this is really very easy. Drop beginning alif lam, drop final alif or ta marbuta or ya alif. Do it in a way that makes sense to you and you'll pretty much nail it the first time. Al-Kuwait is the name of the country, Kuwait. So someone from there is Kuwaiti or Kuwaitiya. Again, this is one of the few places where you get to say, hey, thanks Arabic for being simpler than English. So rock that on. All right, now let's talk about human plurals. Human plurals are treated very differently in Arabic than they are in English. Only humans get to be truly plural. Now, technically, this is only thinking beings, so angels and jinn get to be truly plural, but we're not going there. So we're just going to go with human plurals are treated differently. For masculine or mixed groups, that is, if there's even one man in the group, it counts as a masculine or mixed group. Let's ignore the sexist implications of that for now and just focus on the grammar. We have what's called jam' mudhakkar salim. So we've seen the word jam' for plural before, a little bit of a mouthful for a non-native speaker to learn to say, from the jim, mim, ayn root for to gather. And then mudhakkar is our word for masculine, that is grammatically masculine. And then salim, from the very common sin, lem, mim root, which means like to deliver something. We have salim is safe or sound. You'll sometimes see it as sound masculine plural, but then you'll make the mistake of thinking you mean the sound of the word. And it's not. It's more like safe and sound. So when we have the masculine or mixed group of people, of more than two people, we would use the dual if there was only two of them. We are going to use the una or ina endings for plurals. In spoken Arabic, it's always ina, and it's going to depend upon the grammar of the sentence that the phrase is in, whether it's una or ina in formal Arabic. If you just go with ina all the time, no one is really going to bat an eye about it. So, for example, mohandas, here's a new word. You can tell it comes from a foreign language because it's got too many letters. It comes from Sanskrit, I believe. So, mohandas is an engineer. So, mohandas Lubnani. Lubnan is the name of the country Lebanon. So, Lubnani is Lebanese. So, mohandas Lubnani, a Lebanese engineer. We're going to make him plural. We're going to say muhandasuna lubnaniyuna. So human plurals tend to rhyme as well when they're in this what we call sound form. So muhandasuna lubnaniyuna. Now we know that it's a group of three or more people, at least one of whom is a man, and they're Lebanese and they're engineers. A bahith is a researcher. You can see it's got the fa'il form. It's the doer of this act. Urduni, so a bahith Urduni is a Jordanian researcher. Sometimes you'll see the een ending rather than the un ending, so bahithina Urduniyina are Jordanian engineers. And you end up with two yas in a row, which looks silly but is actually correct. So one of them is for the nisba and one of them is for the ending, Urduniyina. So that looks ridiculous, but it's actually correct. Again, in regular speech, everyone uses the een endings, and it's going to depend upon the grammar of the rest of the sentence, which one you'll use in formal Arabic. Don't really worry about that for right now, because we're still doing phrases and haven't got to sentences yet. So this is the safe plural, the sound plural. If you don't know what the plural of a human noun is, then you would use the una or ina plural. So for example, if you were talking about a talib, a student, you might say talibun, and everyone would totally understand you. It would be like saying there are 4 childs in that car. Everyone will get it, it just sounds a little off. No one will really care. But it's really common for nouns representing people to have broken human masculine plurals. And the best way to do this is just to learn them when you learn the noun, or pick them up as you go. For example, Talib al-Iraqi, the Iraqi student. Al-Iraq is the name of the country. So we're going to make it plural. Now you might be inclined to say Talibun al-Iraqiyun, and everyone will understand you. No one will have a problem with that. But like many commonly used nouns referring to people, talib has an irregular, broken human plural. So tullab is the plural of talib. So the adjective won't change. It'll still use the nisba, it'll still use the sound plural ending. But the plural of the noun is broken. So at-tullab al-Iraqiyun is the correct thing to say, the Iraqi students. But if you said at-talibun al-Iraqiyun, everyone would get it, and nobody would have a problem with comprehension. And then they'll calmly take you aside and be like, oh, hey, it has a different plural, but of course you're not a native speaker, so we're going to be cool with that. So it's also common for non-nisba adjectives like kabir and saghir and so forth to have broken human plurals as well. And these are totally best learned as you go. You can just fill these in as you go on later. So Mohandas Omani, Oman is the name of the country, Omani from Oman, and then kabir. So we often use the word kabir, big, or saghir, small, to mean like senior and junior, or more important and less important as well. So a Mohandas Omani kabir is not necessarily a big Omani engineer, but like an important or senior Omani engineer. So if we want to make them plural, we're going to say muhandasuna, omaniyuna, and you want to say kabiruna, and everyone will understand you perfectly, mi'a bil mi'a, 100%. However, it has an irregular human plural, kibar. So muhandasuna, omaniyuna, kibar is what you're really going to learn to say. But learning these broken plurals of adjectives is definitely a low priority for you at this point in learning Arabic. Just learn the sound plural endings, and everyone will be able to understand the point you're trying to get across, and then you can learn the broken plurals for the adjectives one by one. I really would not worry about that. Now, Arabic cultures tend to be what we call homosocial. People tend to hang out with members of their same gender, more or less exclusively. This is less true in cities, this is less true for younger people, but it still holds true for the culture at large. So if you have a group made up entirely of women, which tends to be a little more common in their cultures than in Western cultures, then we have what's called jam' mu'annath salim, the sound feminine plural, sound meaning safe and sound here again. Groups made up entirely of women use the at endings for plurals, and these are very, very regular, so they're easy to learn. So if the muhandas is a woman, we're going to call her a muhandasa, an engineer. In English, we just call them an engineer regardless of gender, but in Arabic, we want to mark gender. So the plural is muhandasat. Ta marbuta changes to alif ta. This is very, very common. So muhandasat is a group of 3 or more people. Remember, we'd use the dual if there was only 2 of them, who are engineers and who are all women. So at-taliba, female student, becomes talibat, group made up entirely of female students. If there's even one man in the group, you have to call them at-talab. And that's just the way the language rolls. I don't have an editorial comment here, but that's how it works. These kinds of groups made up entirely of women, or entirely of men, for example, tend to be a lot more common in Arabic cultures than they are in ours. So we could say, for example, at-talibat al-masriyat, the Egyptian students, who are all women. Effectively, all nouns and adjectives use this ending for all female groups. So we can look at some examples here. So muhandasat, engineers who are all women, lubnaniyat, and here's a new word, veki. Veki means clever or smart. Vekiyat, smart. So in English, we just say smart Lebanese engineers. We don't mark it for gender. We don't mark it for plural, for the adjectives either. But in Arabic, we have to do both of those. So muhandasa, engineer, becomes muhandasat. Lubnaniya becomes lubnaniyat. Vekiya becomes vekiyat. So smart Lebanese engineers. Here we have at-talibat, the students who are all female. Al-Amrikiyat, Al-Jadidat, the new American students. When you translate it into English as the new American students, you don't mark it for gender typically, unless you have some really compelling reason to say that, and then you say it with a different phrase or sentence. But in Arabic, we have to mark all of these to make it make sense. Arabic is more complicated than English, not necessarily more difficult, though sometimes it is. The only exception is the word for women. So women has an irregular plural. And in fact, it's irregular in the singular as well. So a woman is imra'a. So imra'a masriya latifa, a nice Egyptian woman. But if it becomes definite, it drops the I and becomes al-mar'a. So al-mar'a al-masriya al-latifa, the nice Egyptian woman. The word is going to change forms from definite or from indefinite to definite here, which is really, really uncommon as far as Arabic words go. And the word for woman is about the only common one that does this. And then it has a completely irregular human plural form, nisa. So nisa, you can see it's got nothing to do with imra'a. A mar'a is a person. Nisa is like human. So that's where it comes from. So nisa is the plural of al-mar'a. So that's one you just have to memorize and learn, and it's common enough that you'll learn it pretty quickly. So nisa, and then the adjectives still need to agree. Masriyat latifat, so nice Egyptian women is what we have here. So human plurals work very differently from non-human plurals. Non-human plurals are treated as if they're feminine singular. Only humans get to be truly plural, and then on top of that, if the group of humans is made up entirely of women or girls, we use a separate and much easier set of endings. However, many human plural nouns and adjectives have broken plural forms, and these are just best learned as you go. Don't sweat this. Learn the basics, communicate with people, and even if you're communicating with them in a little bit of a garbled fashion, everyone will understand it, and they'll be really happy that you're learning to speak Arabic. In the next set of videos, we'll move from phrases to sentences, but for now, I'm going to say ma